Hello, I hope you're having a good day. Today we'll take a look at a movie called Dead Mine. On one of the islands of the Malay archipelago, a group of pirates who have just looted a private yacht is resting after a successful raid. One of the bandits goes to relieve himself and finds a strange iron mask among the bushes. Curious, the man investigates the surroundings and stumbles upon a cave. As he explores it, he suddenly falls through a hidden hole in the ground into a network of underground tunnels. Sometime later, a group of mercenaries lands on the island to explore an old Japanese military bunker from World War II. The client funding the expedition is Warren Price, the son of a millionaire who has brought along his girlfriend Su Ling. The mercenaries take the mission seriously, knowing that pirates are active in these waters. However, one of them, Sergeant Papa Snake, decides to play a prank on his comrades by scaring them with an old skull he found in the bushes. Price is outraged by his behavior, since Captain Tino Prawa, the leader of the group, had assured him that his men were true professionals. The captain is forced to reprimand the sergeant. Soon, Price finds the old bunker and prepares to descend into it, but Su Ling refuses to follow and promises to wait on the surface. Price rushes toward the entrance, unaware that former military engineer Stanley, now turned mercenary, who joined Captain Prawa's team under the orders of Price's father, is mocking him. Besides Stanley, the expedition includes a Japanese scientist named Rie, who accompanies Warren Price. Inside the bunker, they find decomposing bones and rusted weapons, remains of soldiers who died many years ago. Meanwhile, Price amuses himself with an old rifle, pretending to be a sniper. At the same time, Stanley tries to get Captain Prawa to reveal what exactly Price is hoping to find on the island, but the captain only knows that his duty is to protect the young man. The engineer becomes uneasy due to rumors about pirates, but the captain assures him that his men can handle them. After inspecting the small bunker, Price realizes it's not what he was looking for, and the team sets out to explore the entire island. In the distance, they see a large iron door. Price orders them to advance toward it. Stanley explains that they are looking for an abandoned colonial structure, considering that the Japanese repurposed it for their own needs. But first, Stanley must inspect the structure for safety. While inspecting it, he explains to Price that he wants to understand that period of his country's history. Stanley claims that a soldier is not simply a person, but must be redesigned so that an ordinary man begins to kill his own kind out of duty and obedience. A soldier, according to him, is above all a weapon, and he too was once one. Captain Prawa orders everyone not to stray too far, and it soon becomes clear he was right. The group is attacked. The mercenaries fight back, but realize they cannot face a numerically superior enemy and are forced to retreat into the bunker. There they become trapped after one of the attackers throws a grenade into the mine, wounding Ario and causing a collapse. The young man receives help, but the exit is blocked and there is no communication. The question arises, who attacked them and why? They direct the question to Price, and under pressure he is forced to admit that an expedition funded by his father's company discovered a similar bunker on an island near Sumatra a couple of years ago. There they found coded messages, and Price, working with them, tried to decipher them. He speculated that they referred to the gold of Yoshida, rumored to be hidden in a mine on one of the islands. But aside from Price and Rie, no one else could have known about this discovery. After the discussions, Stanley suggests looking for another exit, leading the group to descend into the mine. After wandering through the tunnels for a while, they find a wooden bridge that seems sturdy. However, as the group steps onto it, lights suddenly come on, illuminating the Japanese rising sun military flag, and a propaganda song begins to play through the internal communication system, frightening the explorers. The group speculates that either someone is still down there or their enemies have followed them, as there's no way a generator could still be running after more than 80 years. The captain initially mistakes some photographs for people, but soon realizes they depict scenes of violence against prisoners of war. The team locates a communications center, and while the others examine it, Sergeant Snake, standing guard, spots a mysterious figure in a hazmat suit and gas mask watching him. However, when he turns around, the figure has vanished without a trace. Meanwhile, Stanley examines a map on the wall and realizes that this island was a Japanese army position in 1945, specifically occupied by Yoshida's units. Stanley understands that it wasn't just the gold that brought Price there and urges him to be honest, since their lives are now intertwined. Something is clearly wrong in this place. It's not a typical bunker or a simple vault. Moreover, the photographs they found turn out to be medical images. Against Price's wishes, Ree reveals that a secret medical unit operated there, using the bunker as a research center to study chemical and biological weapons by experimenting on prisoners of war as test subjects. The mercenaries are outraged by the deception, since they were hired as guards, not combatants. This changes the cost of their service. Price insults Stanley, who lunges at him, but the captain steps in to stop the fight. The group continues forward, and as they move through the mine, figures in protective suits silently follow them, unseen. Soon the team discovers a room that once served as a barracks. Ario is placed on what remains of a bed, and the captain orders everyone to stay there while he and the sergeant search for another exit. Price protests, fearing that the captain will find the gold first. While they rest, Stanley opens up in conversation, sharing that during his service in Afghanistan, he got into a minor fight and suddenly realized he could kill anyone, regardless of guilt. He was terrified to know he had lost his humanity, and that's why he left the army. Meanwhile, the captain's group discovers a room that once held Australian prisoners of war. In the barracks, the wounded Ario hears strange noises coming from beneath his bed. He gets up and sees the floor beginning to move. He doesn't have time to call for help before a monstrous creature drags him underground. Yoko runs after him, and Stanley and Rie also descend into the tunnel, but remain slightly behind. The mercenary Yoko hears movement but doesn't see the strange masked creature fleeing through the tunnel. At the same time, Rie finds Ario's body atop a pile of human bones. The young man is gone, and nothing can be done for him. Suddenly, they are attacked. Meanwhile, the captain's group finds medical records detailing the experiments carried out by the Japanese in the bunker, which include preserved parts of human bodies. Simultaneously, Yoko stumbles into an underground chamber filled with human remains, including the grotesquely mutilated body of a pirate. Yoko kills one of the monstrous creatures, but the gunfire draws more of them. He is quickly overwhelmed, while Rie and Stanley are captured by a figure wearing a gas mask, a Japanese soldier who refuses to acknowledge that the war has ended. Stanley manages to disarm the soldier, and when they remove his mask, they discover a strangely altered man. They try to explain the truth to him, but he refuses to believe them. Rie shows him a video on her iPad of Japan's surrender aboard the USS Missouri, which finally breaks him. It turns out there were originally 2 of them there, and his comrade had urged him for years to abandon the post and return to civilization. But he killed him. Meanwhile, the captain and the sergeant discover that the door through which they entered the medical lab is now sealed. Suddenly, one of the creatures attacks Price, injuring him. They try to wound the monster, but it has no effect. The creature advances until the sergeant kills it with an improvised spear. They give Price first aid, but his injury is severe. The Japanese soldier explains that he had guarded this place for years. When communications were cut off, his comrade wanted to surrender to the victors, but he killed him. He also reveals that many prisoners were turned into monsters due to experiments carried out by Unit 731. The experimental gas drove them insane and transformed them into monstrous beings. He and his comrades were also injected with the gas under the promise it would keep them young and healthy, but this was the result. Although the scientist's goal was to create super soldiers, this was not his final experiment. They perfected the formula and created their ultimate masterpiece, the Guardians of the Empire. As the captain inspects the lab, he finds a hidden compartment with mutated remains crucified on the walls. Nearby are syringes and vials filled with a golden solution scattered around. It turns out that gold was the base of the experiments. Price is deeply disappointed by Yoshida's true goal, while the sergeant mocks him. At that moment, the Japanese soldier admits there is another way to the surface and offers to show it to them. Though they don't fully trust him, they have no other choice. Meanwhile, the captain and the sergeant try once again to open the lab doors. Price and Su Ling discuss their situation and realize they cannot leave empty-handed. The couple steals one of the syringes containing the golden formula, knowing it could be worth a fortune as a biological weapon on the black market. Just then, the lab doors open, and the mercenaries discover a shrine filled with dozens of creatures dressed in samurai armor. They are Imperial Japanese Guard soldiers who were injected with the mutagenic compound, transforming into the so-called Guardians of the Empire. The monsters immediately attack, wounding the captain. He orders Price and Su Ling to run, while the sergeant stays behind to hold off the Imperial Guardians, though he is gravely injured in the process. The captain and Price open a large vent and tell the couple to jump. Then the captain returns to help the sergeant, but arrives too late and watches him die before he can reach Price and Su Ling. They navigate through the underground tunnels and eventually stumble upon the cave where Yoko was killed. There, the creatures attack again, forcing the group to fight back using the sharpened bones of their fallen predecessors. The three manage to escape and accidentally discover a room where Stanley, Ri, and the Japanese soldier are located. No one could have anticipated the dangers of this mission or what they would face there. Now they must try to find a way out. While the others debate their next move, Su Ling, desperate to save Price, injects him with the golden formula they stole from the lab. At that moment, the Imperial Guardians burst through the tunnel. The group flees, but the Japanese soldier stays behind to hold off the enemies and sacrifices himself. The guards find the mutated prisoners and remove their masks, turning them into allies. The survivors desperately try to escape through the tunnels, but Price's condition worsens, and he can no longer walk. A creature catches up to them and attacks Stanley, but he manages to survive by crushing the monster's head with a rock. Amid the chaos, Su drags Price into a room and closes the door behind her, leaving the captain, Stanley, and Rai trapped in the hallway. Realizing Su won't reopen the door, the three flee deeper into the tunnels, only to be constantly confronted by the Imperial Guardians. They manage to shut a door behind them, but they lack the strength to hold it. The captain orders Stanley and Rai to save themselves while he stays behind to face the guards. Meanwhile, Su drags Price toward an exit, where daylight and trees are finally visible on the other side of the mine. The doors eventually give way, and the captain dies fighting heroically to his last breath. Ri and Stanley fall into the water. At that moment, Price, under the effects of the formula, rises and appears recovered. But he has been reborn, transformed, and kills Su. Ri and Stanley escape the mine through an underwater tunnel system, but the Imperial Guardians are close behind. Only Ri manages to emerge from the tunnels. Exhausted, she reaches the shore, but a guard rises from the water and grabs her by the neck. She turns toward the lake, from which more guards are now emerging, and raises her sword over her. The movie is a solid zombie horror production with visually impressive monsters and decent performances. The idea of an alchemical serum based on gold is also quite interesting. However, the ending is not its strongest point, as it leaves the resolution ambiguous. The Imperial Guardians and the zombies have escaped into the world, but what happens next remains unknown. I hope you enjoyed the video.